So in the rational world, to get any work done, you need ego and passion and anger.
Anger also.
To drive things and to move actions in society. And actually, when we are searching the truth or the Brahman, we say that calm down and have a tranquil mind. So to me, that seems like a conflict. So it seems like you detach yourself from the rational world completely, and then only you find the Brahman. That's one question. The other question, I have two questions. So the other question is, when we say evolving consciousness, so like if many people evolve to a different level of consciousness, then what does it bode for humanity? Like what is the purpose? Like is it for preventing some disaster, or is it for evolving to a next level? And what is that level?
Can we deal with the first question first? Because my mind doesn't stay with two questions. Then we'll come back to the next. You might have to ask me again. Now to the first question, look at me sitting here. I think I have touched something, at least something. And my mind is calm and quiet and not angry. You try asking questions like it does to a normal guru. You'll be asked to leave the room. No, I'm not angry. There is no point. There is nothing to get angry about. Because I have no defense. You know what I mean? I don't have to defend anything. So my mind is in a little bit of a different situation, which I think you can also be. It's not that you can't. But I function perfectly all right in most things. I pay my taxes. Not the Satsang Foundation, my personal things. I have a family. I have 2 kids who are already grown up and got married now. Sometimes they listen, sometimes they don't. But I don't get upset, but I can handle it. See, personally, I think that when you touch that, whatever it is, it's not as if you are completely cut off from the world or you cannot function in the world. I believe you can function better. Because the source of your intelligence, from where your intellect comes, is expanded, is much more than before. And the cells of your body and brain have undergone some change. And therefore you can stay. If you don't want, you can retire. That's a different matter. Anytime. But you can, and it will make no difference to you. But, however, there is a catch. To touch that, you might have to withdraw for some time. So in the time when you withdraw, how will you survive in this world? Well, you have to work out your own mechanisms. I don't know how, because it differs with individuals. However, sometimes I also pretend to be angry to get something done. But most people quickly discover that it's a pretension, so it makes no sense really. But there are ways and means by which this can be handled. And please believe me, if you are touched the spiritual truth, the world is not going to come to a grinding halt. It will still go on, and I can still contribute. You can still contribute to it, but you'll probably do it in a better way, in a calm way, in a peaceful way, in a quiet way. That's my answer to it. I again stress, I again give attention, bring your attention to the fact that when you're starting on the journey, you do need some time and some situation where you have some solitude, because in the middle of the world it's not so easy. Once you've done, then you're free. When I say solitude, take off some time in your life and spend some time contemplating, reading, understanding. understanding, meditating, doing your kriya, whatever you're doing. And after that, come back again. And then once in a year, do it again until you stabilize yourself. Once you're stabilized, I personally think that one can function. I am functioning. And I'm not functioning in a small way. You know. I go all over the world and I have to meet all kinds of people and it's okay. Okay. Your second question, can you say that again, please?
Yeah. So the question was we are trying to evolve consciousness, and like when there are many more evolved beings, so what does that bode for humanity? Is it what's the purpose of that? Like, will it make the history of humanity better, or the future of humanity better, or will it prevent some disaster, or what does it bode for humanity?
Yeah. From our understanding, as far as material progress is concerned, we have come to a level which is more than enough for human beings. Beyond that, I don't know what we can do. We can have money and maybe in the future we can pay to go to the moon, but beyond that, what can we do? So now we believe, we understand, not believe, that the next stage of evolution is the spiritual evolution. And just as from the primates to the human, to the Homo sapien, the next is from the Homo sapien to the yogi. This is our stage of evolution now, coming up. And the attempt is being made very hard to get people out there. So I'm sure some more people, it will always less and others more, some more people who explore and experience the other would slowly increase. And if they increase, what happens? Then the evolution on one hand is a welfare for all humanity. And even genetically, there will begin to come changes in the genes that a human being is a little better than he was before. Scientists would say it's a spontaneous mutation, but something will happen. We are trying to mutate, of course, but it sounds like some other space story, but Matrix. So, and then, so two things, both, what you said, both things. One is, it will increase the level of human spirituality and therefore also welfare. On the other hand, it will also prevent man-made disasters to a great extent. Both. Much of the disasters are man-made. Both of them.
The oneness that you are feeling, you are experiencing, you are having with us.
Of course I have.
Yes. This oneness, where does it take place? Where is it happening? Is it on the level of the witness of the higher self? Or is there a conscious element in it when it is with us individually as disciples? If I may ask.
Okay, let me explain it in a different way. Let's approach it in a different way. While the study of the Upanishads, the practices by which we're going to go into that subject, we were supposed to, but anyway, we'll come to that later. But for your question, it's not very clear to me what you're saying, but whatever I heard, While we study the Upanishads, we discuss, we meet, we question, we find out, we try to figure out ultimately, and then, at least theoretically, even though we don't have all the answers, we feel, okay, there is a self which is the ultimate. There is a little self which is not, is conditioned. And when the conditioned self gets purified and subsides, there is only the self. Theoretically, let's say. Now the thing is, what you said, that when you're in that, suppose all conditionings have gone from one center, let's say, this center, suppose, or you or me. There are no such conditionings, and therefore there is only the real self. Though it puts on a costume and acts out things. If it doesn't act, we can't even teach. So there is a semblance of an ego. But that ego is a shadow. It doesn't have a substance. Okay. And on the other is, if that is so, if one person has touched something, so the good news is that there is a possibility of other people also touching it. It cannot be exclusively that one person touches. And some conditions, others can also touch it. And I think in future many more people might touch it. Because we are evolving towards that. Even though we see the world sometimes being in a terrible phase, the terrible phase is a good churning to bring out the real. Now, I'm not finished with you. When you said, okay, I think you were saying enough now. No, I know. Sorry. Now, suppose somebody or some center has expanded. And that expanded center is like a big magnet. And when you put iron pieces near the magnet, the closer you go, the magnetism spreads onto these iron pieces, induced, right? So therefore, you and I and all of one sitting here, we are all sharing in that in some way, which is what I mean by saying you're all in me, with me. That's what I mean.
Yes, that is what I wanted to know, what it means when you say you are one with us, you are with us.
I didn't
always.
say that, but you're saying it.
Yes, okay. But I believe in it.
That's it. So that's what I meant. That what is shared is not this little M who is talking, the large one, which is also you and me, and therefore the same. But here you can only understand it, that there is a bigger charge, and this charge is being shared in some way. The charge.
It has to do with energy.
Of course.
It's an energy field that we are sharing. The closer we come, the more intensive is the nearness we feel. Can that be said?
The only difficulty is whether we are coming closer. That's the question.
Yes, right.
Because there are many blocks, you see.
The mind doesn't allow it.
I don't know, mind. We don't allow ourselves.
Yes.
We feel that we might lose our individuality.
Closeness doesn't mean physical.
No, not physical. Please, I don't want anybody in my lap.
So is it kind of a reflection?
Reflection? No. It's not a reflection. It's as I explained to you, it's like you have a magnet and you have iron pieces around, and then automatically the iron begins to become a magnet, at least temporarily, until you do the induction technique and make it permanent. So the Kriya is the induction technique.
But there is no level of conscious knowing, particularly individually, about us on that level.
Well, we can if you want. Do you want to open a book?
No. I hope that this is happening from your side.
If necessary, but only if you are willing. Not
So what is required from my side?
We don't read sealed letters, personal letters. If somebody says read, then we read.
Right.
There's a code of conduct in this matter.
But there must be a level of general, total understanding.
Yes. Yes.
That's what I meant. That's what I meant by reading us.
Don't use that word, it's
All
still
right.
dangerous.
Okay.
Reading.
A total
I believe in
understanding
privacy.
individually or generally?
Generally.
Okay. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, ma'am.
Sriram, I have a little bit dangerous question.
Oh,
It's maybe a strange question. There are a lot of good, I thought, good masters.
Are there?
Sai Baba, Bhagwan, Muji, and go on.
I know nothing about that.
I don't know nothing about it, but I read it
Mhm.
and I saw it. And how can you believe what you are saying?
How can you believe what?
How can I believe that you are sincere?
I don't know.
No. So that when you ask of people to give up their individuality,
Give up? I don't ask you to give up your individuality for me. I'm saying you give up your individuality for yourself, not for me.
no. So then I have a question and it's totally theory. And I agree that my question stops. Because questions doesn't solve anything. So that's my only question. How can I trust you? How can I be sure that after a while you also do things like the other silly people who, and I know that a master or a great teacher
I understand.
you understand?
Yes. So I'm saying that you have to see for some time and then find out for yourself. There's no other way. You can't look into the future, so you don't know. So you can only, don't take the man so seriously, but listen to the words and try to work out something for yourself, not me. You know what I mean? What we are studying here is Upanishad. What we are practicing is Kriya. And we are trying to bring a link between the two. Now, whether a personality, the problem here is that when you go to a teacher, you make the personality more important and then you worship the personality and you hang your everything on that peg. I'm saying, don't do that. Just be friends. And try to examine what is being said carefully. And then find something for yourself. And at some point, if you find that this person is not doing things, maybe right or wrong, but not right according to you, then you should be free to say bye, all's you, because the teaching doesn't depend on any one person. It's a universal teaching that has been around for ages. So if you pick up some straws which are useful for you, hold on to it. Don't worry about this too much. So don't peg your faith on the person, but look at the words and try to figure out if you can find it yourself. All help required can be given to you. But tomorrow, I don't understand in some way what you mean by tomorrow silly things, because I don't know. Also, I do some silly things, so I don't know what it means. But
No, I can explain. Sai Baba was supposed to have Sai Baba, not she, Sai Baba. Sai Baba. Sai Baba, yeah?
Sai Baba, Satya
I
Sai.
don't want to talk about it because it's so.
I think Satya Sai Baba is influencing your microphone. Not even being able to express. Now, the only thing you can do at the moment is to talk to people, meet people who have known me for so many years, and find out how it functions. That you can do. Because you know me only for a few years, right? There are people who know me for many years. And then talk to them and figure out if I'm funny. I mean, that way. Like, you know what I mean. And the other thing is, don't worry about Sai Baba, this Baba, that Baba. Just leave it. This is what I'm trying to say. Go directly to the Upanishads, to the Yoga Sutras, learn, and if you have a doubt and you want a solution, come. We will try to solve it for you. Don't depend on the personality in any way. Especially if the person begins to say that I am all powerful. I am all powerful. Suppose the person begins to say, the teacher, that I am all powerful. I heard somebody the other day on YouTube, somebody said, so why don't you teach the Upanishads? I said, Upanishads, why I am there? Why should you study the Upanishads? He didn't say that I don't know the Upanishads, so I cannot teach you. He said, why Upanishad? I am there. So when such things happen and somebody is on an ego trip, then you got to watch out a bit. Find out for yourself. My trust has been from the very beginning to encourage people to explore themselves, not depend upon me. But human nature is such that people like to depend on me.
Well, I don't want to depend on you, but I have to trust what I believe in.
But what you
And
believe,
well, there is
what you believe in also may not be right, who knows?
That's true, but then it's my truth. So
No, it's not. There's only one truth. There's no my truth, your truth.
but when I depend on you, then what you would say, I always would believe. And that's
So don't believe.
So that's what I want.
Yeah, exactly. So you don't have to believe everything that I say. Look at it yourself. Use your mind and look at it. There's no need to believe. And the spiritual experience is not belief. The experience, it's not a belief. Okay, let me explain this. When you say belief, it means that I don't know something, therefore I believe. The sun rises in the morning, I can see the sun. I don't have to say I believe there is a sun, because I see the sun. The moment I know I see the sun, I don't have to have a belief in the sun. The moment I put in the word believed in, I'm not sure, perhaps the sun is there.
Thank you.
Think.
I have a question on Vedanta.
I'll just come back. We will give some chance to the men too. So.
have a question. So when we are seeing things, there are sights. When we are listening, there are sounds with the nose. The data that we are perceiving
Absolutely.
is pretty much tied up to each sense organ.
Yes.
And then when we are thinking of new senses, or as you described, new means of perception, does the data that we need to become aware of change? So do we kind of look out for new kinds of data rather than sights, sounds, images, smell,
Yeah.
etc.?
Yeah. You're right.
Okay, what is the nature of that data? Is it silence?
That-
Is it quietness?
That is silence, quietness, and even more. So therefore I am saying, open up. And then you can find out what it is all about. Even the angle of, okay. Normally, if something is here, and I am here, and I need to reach it, what do? I move forward. Right? It's like a linear movement towards the object that you desire or you want. What if that which you want is everywhere? How will you move? You cannot move. So it's different from the ordinary data that the senses, but as far as the senses are concerned, anything that is there, you need to move towards it to see it. What if it is there everywhere? Do you need to move towards it? No. I'm just giving an example of how what you derive from opening up the other senses can mean, roughly. But I would prefer that you open it up and find out for yourself, rather than depend on what I'm trying to tell you. I can give you brief guidelines, of course, not inaccurate. Hey, there was someone here who wanted.
I have a question on Vairagya.
On?
On Vairagya.
Vairagya.
Disgust of the worldliness.
Mhm.
Sometimes I think since maybe, let's say since about 2 years, I feel that I've been sometimes in a state of Vairagya, but then also I'm asking myself, maybe it is not Vairagya but depression. So how can I distinguish, how can I find out when do I have real Vairagya or it's a depression, more psychological?
But I can't see the connection or relationship between Vairagya and depression. I don't see it.
It's a kind of when we are, for me, Vairagya, the understanding of Vairagya is
Yeah, that's what I'm asking.
it's not worth it to stay in it. There is no point of involving myself into the worldly game. So this is how I understood it for me. And so then in life there are situations coming up where difficulties come, disappointments come, the whole Maya story. So then I'm asking myself, is it now a kind of escape I take when I say, now I have Vairagya, or is it true, my true urge?
What do you think?
It's sometimes, I think, so it's sometimes this and sometimes that. It is a mix. And I would like to have an instrument to find out when it is what.
Okay, let me explain now. Vairagya, from the Vedantic point of view, means that you discriminate between what is real and what is unreal. And you see that most of the things are unreal. And you're looking for the real, so you detach yourself from that. This is Vairagya. Now, depression is when you're so tired that you don't want to do anything, and your mind has attained a state where it doesn't want to exert at all, and it is in a kind of loop. But anyone who consciously practices Vairagya, they are not in that kind of a low depressive state, they are bubbling with energy. Because they have given up what they think is not required, and they have very limited things to expend their energy on. So if it is Vairagya really, then you will not be down, you will be up. It's a conscious process, it's not an unconscious process. When you say depression, whether you want it or not, you can't do anything, you can't mix with the world. You may want to, but you cannot. But here, that difference is there. You don't want to. It's not that you want to and you can't, then it's a mental state of depression. But you don't want to consciously. That is not a depressive state.
Hello. Can you explain in a less metaphorical way how to clean up the muck from the Sushumna channel?
This we will do in Kriya. That's exactly what we need to do. So while things are abstract and metaphysical and so on, there is always a link between that and our body and mind. So that's why I want to call this discussion Exploring Consciousness, Body, Mind and Beyond. Because the body and mind play a very important role in touching that which is beyond. Otherwise we won't have this body. So therefore, the process of clearing the muck from the Sushumna, you got it, important, is the practice of Kriya. Which we are going to discuss tomorrow or day after. We have 2 more days, right? 2.5. So,
Sir, I have a question, but I don't hear. So I don't know if it's silly, but so in the ancient books, in the ancient scriptures, we read about different gods.
Why is everybody saying I don't want to be silly and then? Okay, tell me.
So in the ancient texts, they talk about different gods. Like sir, you also talked today about Kali. So are these gods actually existing in this form, or as separate entities in this world somewhere? And
No.
sir, have you seen actually gods in face to face, or is it only a construct of the mind?
Okay, let me, now this is, the Upanishad says, as according to the Upanishad, there is one supreme reality. Well, it manifests itself in different forms. This manifestation is in human form, so there are many realms where it can manifest in different other forms, which are not human. As long as it lasts, it is real. But when you go to the Absolute, even that is not real. As long as it lasts. Now look, I am telling you, suppose I tell you that in true essence you are the Brahman in reality. But does it mean that you don't last as Elena? You do. In the same way are the gods, the Vedic gods. They last because they are emanations or manifestations of the Supreme in some form. for a particular purpose, so they last. But in the ultimate analysis, when everything is destroyed, they're also gone. Not in the mud, but even otherwise. When there is a pralaya, everything is gone. There are no gods, there is nothing. There is only the breath of the Brahman going in and out. So they are and they are not. They are in the relative sense, in the absolute sense they are not. And as long as you live in the relative world, you need to have some kind of a connection with this. Because you are also in form, therefore you need some form. Like, even though she is actually absolute, if I need to talk to her and ask her for some coffee, then she is Elena, and I have to relate to her that way, right? So I can't dismiss her saying, ultimate, you are the ultimate essence, you are not Elena. No. Maybe in samadhi everything is one, but when you are awake, so it's like that. And since there is tremendous energy in this universe, and the human being has a capacity to invoke the energy, because after all the source of energy is the bigger self, which in us is the smaller self, you can invoke divinity in any form you like, and then it comes alive.
Where is the play of illusion coming in? This morning in meditation, I was in a stillness and I immediately was in a glacier surrounding, and I knew that I was in the presence of Babaji. And so the question is this my illusions or what is it?
If it's an illusion, then you have doubts. If it is a reality, you have no doubts.
And in another meditation, I had the idea that I was in full stillness, and then a glimpse came in that in this state I can dislocate to any place in the universe. And then the Hans started playing with it.
The what?
Me. I'm starting playing it. I wanted to go to Ganeshpuri. And then it was deeply touching being there. And now, is this another play of...
What do you think? You're asking me, I'm sitting outside you. What do you think? Because from my understanding, if it is a spiritual experience, I do not ask anybody. I have no doubt about it. If I have a slight doubt about it, then only I ask. But the spiritual experience is a completely doubtless experience. It's not something which you don't know, is it there, is it not there. So I think what you need to do is maybe stabilize yourself and go deeper into yourself and then discover, because I cannot answer this question for you.
Thank you.
I'm deeply concerned about all the suffering in the world. So I'm asking the question, is all the suffering because more and more people need to wake up?
Yeah. If more people wake up, then there is some solution for the suffering. So there is no solution in sight. Yeah. May we break the silence. That was a nice silence, huh? I remember that there was somebody speaking. The subject given to him was, what is meditation? And this man, a very sharp mind, very different kind of person. So when the question was put, what is meditation, which was the subject of the day, he started talking about everything which we think is meditation and kind of demolished it, saying this is not meditation. So after having demolished all the forms that we think is meditation, then nothing was left. So there was a silence, beautiful silence. But there's nothing else. Everything is demolished and gone, like Shiva doing his dance of destruction. And it was a beautiful evening. The sun was setting, and there was a breeze, and a bird flew from one branch. I was also sitting there to another. And it was silent. There was meditation. Because all the ideas of meditation had been broken away. The man-made ideas of meditation. And there was meditation. And it was wonderful and quiet and nice and in meditation. Then the man in the front row stood up and said, "Sir, then what is meditation?" Well, the reaction was very funny. This person put his head in his hands and said, "Oh God, what a generation."
Which one?
Jay.
So this clearly cannot be grasped by the mind by any number of words.
Say that again.
As you said, this clearly cannot be grasped by the mind by
The ordinary
mind, by any number of words. Now,
Wow, we have said so many words, I'm sure it's not grasped. Or is it? I don't know.
So when coming back to the three states that you described, in the Upanishads, they go on to extrapolate. I don't understand this well, so my question might not be appropriate. They go on to explain what seems like different Brahmans for each state. A Virat Purusha, a Hiranyagarbha. As a student of Vedanta, how important is it, and as a seeker of the truth, how important is it for me to actually understand and comprehend these different states?
Look, when a word in the Upanishads and the Vedas, it is reference to Hiranyagarbha or to the creator Brahma and so on, there is always a statement underlying it saying, these are temporary, the only reality is the Supreme Brahman. So, therefore, if you fix your attention on that, that is more than enough. You don't have to worry about Hiranyagarbha at all. But it's witchcraft because there are various functions in this world and they're trying to show what kind of energy does this function, what does this function, and so on. Ultimately, all this is derived from one source. So if you're interested in that source, that is more than enough. You don't have to worry about that.
So when we try to understand something, we have this tendency to create mental models in our mind, and we try to evolve that models to conform to the observations that we have. So I feel that there's a paradox in that when we are taught meditation as well, when we are asked to watch our mind, that also kind of involuntarily creates a model inside the mind.
Right.
And where you have a sort of an observer who is watching the observer.
Yes.
But in the simplest case, isn't that I who is watching my thoughts?
Yes.
Also a thought.
Yes. But if you're aware of this now, then you're not falling into that pattern.
But then, isn't that a loop is what I'm asking? Isn't that an infinite recursion where you're...
What was?
Isn't that an infinite recursion kind of a thing where I watch myself, then I watch myself being watched, and so on?
Yeah, until suddenly everything stops, comes to a stop. Okay, let me put it this way. When you do any technique of meditation, including watching your mind, who is watching your mind? Anyway, including watching your mind, usually the mind is all scattered, right? It's thinking of one thing, it's thinking of another. Therefore your energies are also scattered. Now to find out that which is so serious and important, you need to gather these energies together. At least your intellectual energies, your mind energies, your feelings, everything has to be put together. Therefore, all the training of various schools is basically to make a mold in which this shapeless thing can be stuffed inside and made into a certain shape, because it's being wasted. Okay. Once you've done that, if you want to see what you have created, what will you do? Leave it in the mold or break open the mold and look at it? What will you do? So, while all this is required, in the end, with the awareness that these are only forms and shapes which have been imposed on the mind to bring the energies together, it's finally broken. And when it is broken, then there is only the reality. Now you said, I'm watching the mind, so who's watching the mind? So that doesn't mean you should stop watching the mind. Keep watching. And one day, as you go deeper and deeper, you'll discover that there is no watcher and watch, there's only one. But you need to start somewhere, right? You can't say it's just going to come to me and I don't do anything about it.
This watcher, is this a...
Now what has happened is, now you have got caught in the word watcher. Can we free ourselves from that word?
So this I, does it have, is it a special kind of a thought? Because it's able to perceive other thoughts.
Right, but also the awareness that something is perceiving it too.
The other day, my husband was watching a video of YouTube of 3M, satsang of Badri in Badrinath.
Now we are in trouble, yeah.
I was catched by a word that 3M was saying. He was saying that
He was.
That is only through Shakti that we can meet Shiva, we can know Shiva. And
Was that in Badrinath or was it in Varanasi?
probably Varanasi in October.
Because it's Shiva's city, so I had to say something. Okay.
It was on October.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. So my question is, this Bindu that is how to say, racing or traveling up. What is the nature? Is the nature of the I, the self? Is this Bindu the self? Is the same thing? What is the nature of this Bindu?
The Bindu is the sum total of your individual existence. Shakti, the dynamic self which moves with things, and as it ascends to higher levels of awareness, this Bindu loses its conditioning and then becomes one with Shiva. That's what happened. Meaning, not becomes one, realizes its intrinsic nature as Shiva when it touches here. Now for that, what our friend asked, the monk has to go from the Sushumna. This is the practice. So when I say Shakti, you must understand, there are a lot of women around, so I wanted to say that without Shakti you cannot receive. No, it's not like that. Don't you see how there are two poles in this earth? There is the dainty, fashionable, artistic woman. And there is sometimes it's the reverse. And then there is the practical, solid man. And when you need a proper picture, then you need to somehow combine these two in some way. In the same way, when you need to reach that, you need to start first. The only instrument you have is the mind. We don't have any other instruments. Although, in the ultimate analysis, the mind, as we know it now, cannot touch it. But the only instrument we have is the mind. So the mind has to go in an imaginative way. You know something? Animals also are very intelligent. It's not that they're not. They're very intelligent. But they don't have imagination. Imagination is something which is special for human beings. And it is that imagination which has come to us from that Supreme Being which imagines this universe, and then when not necessary finishes it off. We have an amsha, or a little part of that capacity to visualize, to imagine. So when we visualize and imagine, it becomes a reality after a while. I want to build a house. What do I do first? I visualize. I think. Then I call the architect and I say, no, it is like this. Already I have the house in my mind. And after some months, it becomes reality. In India, after some years, but here it becomes reality. So, what is the secret? The secret is that we have the capacity to visualize, and it can become a reality. Now this is a two-edged weapon. If you learn the secret of visualization, you could probably destroy somebody. So there is always a safety catch, which means unless the human being is purified fully, he cannot have the full capacity to make visualization a reality. Therefore, all the great teachings have said, develop compassion, otherwise you're like some kind of a madman with a nuclear weapon. So first purify yourself before you are able to access it. In fact, there's a safety catch, you cannot access it. So, that is Shakti. The word Shakti in Sanskrit means kinetic, dynamic energy. And for some reason it has always been classified with the feminine energies. And when it becomes silent and potential and calm and tranquil, then it's called Shiva. Unfortunately, our minds are always not in that tranquil state, they're always in the active state. So without Shakti, we cannot touch that. We are anyway.
Is there something like a Mahabindu? Is there something like a Mahabindu?
Mahabindu. I haven't heard.
Cosmic Bindu?
I haven't heard. There is a Bindu and there is a Bindi.
Is it Prakriti joining Purusha? Is it the same process or not?
Wait a minute. Now we are going into Sankhya, Prakriti Purusha. In Sankhya there is no Prakriti joining Purusha. When all Prakriti is gone, only Purusha remains. Now when you say Purusha, it's not a male, okay?
Whereas Shiva is.
No, there.
So it is Purusha.
Well, the different terms. Some say Brahman. The Sankhyans say Purusha. The Shaivas say Shiva. But Sankhya is an atheist philosophy.
After churning and the nectar comes out, how does it really happen? Is it like some feeling of happiness or joy? It wells up, the throat fills up. Does it come from the anahat, or can it also come from the place where the bindu goes up? And what relationship of the serotonin, which also makes you feel in a state of happiness, is it also associated with the anahat or the lower center?
Good question, we'll take it up tomorrow. So the first thing I'm going to do tomorrow when we come back in the morning is serotonin. Seriously. The churning, the churning. And what really comes out when you churn? Is it the Amrit or something else first? And then what is this? Where does it come from? And so on. Can we do it tomorrow? Okay.
I have a question. It's a philosophical question that troubles a lot of people, including me occasionally, and that is the suffering of the world. That if there is a Brahman, and you relate that to the Brahman, the creator, and the suffering of the world, well, one could say this is the universe's most evil deity. The most evil deity. It has this power. But there's also so much suffering, and I sometimes wonder. I'd like to think that's not the case, but I sometimes think that maybe there is no Brahman, and it's just the universe is just totally random. In other words, things occur randomly, suffering occurs, the whole thing, which of course is quite different to having a creator God. But how to reconcile that with suffering? Can you comment on that?
Look, on this earth, there is not only suffering, but there is also joy.
Well, indeed. But
Indeed. So we all survive exist and live because there is joy, not because there is suffering. But suffering is inevitable when you enjoy. There are two sides always. There cannot be only suffering and there cannot be only joy. It depends on the person who has gone through it.
But the reality, of course, for a person in deep suffering and having suffering,
For a person
there's a
who...
real reality for them for a period of time.
Yeah, and for those who are enjoying, that's the real reality.
But how can a creator God that is supposed to be all compassionate...
The Upanishad does not believe in a creator God at all. There is no creator God sitting there. It's just that creation is a growing out or an evolution of the spirit which goes into matter, and then when you realize it is spirit, it goes back to its essence. And very often, suffering is the anvil on which it's shaped properly. It's... Hallelujah.
So what you're saying is that Brahman, unlike sort of the Christian view of the creator,
it's
is
not
more of an impersonal unfolding of reality.
correct. That's what I'm trying to say.
Thank you.
That's my experience of the matter. Which I can't prove to you, of course. But I'm hoping that by and by you'll find out for yourself. There is suffering, no question. It is suffering that brings about a change in us. But there is also joy. You must remember, we can't say there is only suffering. We live in this world because of the joyfulness of the world. If it was only suffering, we would not live. We would want to die, but we don't want to die. We want to enjoy. So when we say suffering, we forget about the joys and think only about the suffering. Of course, when suffering is terrible, when it happens, but I think it wakes you up to the understanding that there must be joy somewhere.
Thank you.
Last question.
The question is, when the churning starts, when you start on the spiritual path, and the poison comes out, how do you deal with that?
Who said the poison?
I've obviously heard
I
you say
understand.
that. And how do you deal with that? Do you just let it keep coming out? Does it get burned away at some point? Are there methods and techniques to deal with it, or you just wait for it to go on its own?
The churning means the overturning of the mind to new concepts, to new understanding, to new discoveries, and then the churning starts. Because of the churning that this happens. And naturally, when the first thing that comes out is all the poison that has gathered in us. You know, in water, if water has to evaporate, it needs to bubble when you heat it. In the same way, if the mind has to be purified, all the muck inside has to come out first. It can't be buried inside, it has to come out. So when you're seriously practicing spiritual sadhana, it's a great chance that it will come out. But it will come out. And when it comes out, there are two ways. One is, some of it you need to allow to go. But then it shouldn't be dangerous to others. So then you need to also control it in some way. As long as it is not harmful to somebody else, allow it to go. Let it overflow. But if it's harmful to somebody, put a stop to it, because it's not only your life, it's also the other person's life. In fact, it happens in many cases when one goes into, not many, some cases, where one thinks one is becoming spiritual. The churning begins, and then one begins to become worse than what one was before. Now that is the time to watch carefully. Can happen to gurus also. That's the time when one has to watch carefully and make sure how to handle this. Because it may be different things to different people, so there is no general way of handling it. Here it becomes very useful if you have somebody who has already walked the path. Because this is largely unexplored territory. One who has walked knows where the pitfalls are. If he has walked, that's a different story. And then, in consultation, perhaps, one can work out how to handle the muck, the poison that comes out. But rest assured, when the poison is clear and gone, what comes out is the nectar. So keeping that hope in front, you should try to handle it to the best of your capacity. No, finished today.